right, I'm back again after a few days off here and some videos in between from other systems. I'm still going over BCS, and Panzer's Last Stand came in, so you might see this map and these units change a little bit. But I'm going to try to do a few examples of some combat. I don't know if they're going to be right. My past video number 2, the safe path rules changed from 1.2 to 2.0. I'm now on a 2.0 rule book, so hopefully that doesn't happen again. We have our friends from the German 5th Light Division activated, and what I'm going to do is take this armor battalion here, and we're going to run it straight up to this point of interest, Bierlefa, I think that's the way you say that. And for the good guys, we have the 4th Armor Brigade of the 7th Armor Division, British, with limited support. So I didn't use the cards here. I left the support on the map, and here's the support. Remember, when you have one of these right here, this unit, when you have one of those, and the counter has only one side that shows support, it must always be in support, like this one does. So that must always be in support. He's limited. If you remember the see-through black outline number here, and that support is anti-tank. And here we have, let me just get that right there, a Matilda unit, a British Matilda unit, 332, and here's a 254. All right, and you'll note that the Matilda has that little, it's a little tiny. Good Lord. I mean, it is a tiny little negative in parentheses there. I hope that's not a plus because I can't even see that. That means that it's a portion of a larger command. I believe that this is the 7th Royal Tank Regiment there, and I think that that used to be called the 7th Battalion RTR, and it became the 7th RTR once it was in North Africa, but I'm not 100% sure. I have to check my history on that one. I believe it was involved in France 40, decimated, and then reformed in North Africa and Egypt, I believe, under a new commander. Last name was Jaron, I think. I'll have to look that up. But anyway, that's a little bit on that. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to try a very basic setup here. And let's see if I have these rules down, because I'm going slow. And then what I learn, I'm putting on video. And these are just the formation markers here and over here. I just elevated them a little bit so as to not be confused that those are functional units or they mean something. All right, let's take a look here. So we'll see what happens. And then, of course, there is one artillery point available. We'll say he's activated and he hasn't used that yet. We'll see how that pans out or how that works. I'm not 100% sure myself. I don't even know if this example is legal, but I think it is. And of course, these Panzers are hard units as denoted by the yellow background. Matilda with the yellow background, I'm assuming same thing. And then the Matilda is just in there for, I don't know if there's any special bonuses for the Matilda. It might just be an identifier. Don't think anything special there that I remember seeing. We're also going to assume that the snafu was passed. And remember that the Axis in Brazen Chariots use the snafu chart, and German formations get -1. There is no Commonwealth snafu modifier, but we're just going to say that the Germans passed here, and then they were able to activate. Also, I'm not using the orders special rule because, well, if I wanted to write down my orders, I'd play TCS, wouldn't I? So there you go. All right. Now, it's worth noting, too, that there is a special rule for Brazen Chariots that, so you might be wondering, well, what difference does it make if it's a Matilda? Keep in mind that there's a special Commonwealth rule that only Matilda and Val armor units and, of course, support units may go into support and be marked as such. So keep that in mind when you're assigning support. Val is, of course, I believe that's Valentine. Let me just make sure. Yep, Valentine. So just keep in mind that you can't just throw any armor unit into support and brazen chariots. I think that's what that special rule means. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it says only Matt and Val army units and support units like that may go into support. Now for the Germans, they have kind of the same thing. Only German units, including the 88, and some Italians, those that can only be in support, and the 102 gun unit. So you can't just place a bunch of Italians in support. There is a rule for that, some Italians. So keep in mind, I tried to make this as legal as possible by just keeping it simple here. Now, the last thing to remember is only certain units can take advantage of support. Now, units which cannot access support are dual units and units that are not attack capable. You must have an up arrow on the counter, if you remember. So, for example, like this machine gun guy here has, man, this thing's harder to aim when you're on camera, has this up arrow here. He's attack capable. You'll notice that the armor here does not have that because they're AV, they're armored units, right? They have an AV value. So if I'm correct, he cannot take advantage of that support. He must be attack capable. And that does not mean dual units either. Just because a dual unit has an up arrow does not mean that they can use support. A unit which is in a hex not allowing the tactical movement. We're all in clear here, so we're just gonna be pretty good. We'll be fine. And it's also worth noting that artillery can be assigned or can be intrinsic, like we see here. That is an intrinsic artillery point right there. All right, keep that in mind. Some other definitions, remember these are intrinsic units. They have their formation designation written on the side right there. Printed affiliation to the right of their unit symbol. So intrinsic, they're part of this. He is part of that. Okay. Don't forget your headquarters command range 12 here and 5 there. That's not very good. He's not activated yet. So 5, well, hold on here. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's fine. 12, definitely there. So there's your command radius. All right, make sure we got that. Okay, remember that a unit in this game gets what is called a fire event. They get 2 fire events. All right, and it's use it or lose it. When it activates, you must either use or lose both of its fire events before another activation can go. You cannot save them. You can initiate up to 2 fire events per activation. And what is a fire event? You use one up when you perform an engagement, an attack by fire, a shock attack, or conduct recon. If you're overstacked, you cannot use fire events. Also, a fire event is expended when announced, regardless of the results. So if you say, I'm going to use a fire event, I'm going to do like an engagement, and then you're like, oh wait, no, it's going to be shitty. And if you're playing with an asshole, then he'd probably be like, oh, sorry, expended. Now, the question is, how do you use them? Can I do that right? Oh, there's one other marker I forgot. You should be tracking the fatigue level of each formation. So let me get that out. We're going to assume these are at 0, and then after I do this, maybe I'll show the roll for fatigue or whatever. All right, argument for the cards is starting to take effect again. Let me just clutter the map some more here. All right, there we go. Fatigue right there. All right, just to clear that up. Also, we're on a secondary road, and that is 1/2 for tactical movement allowances. Let me just make sure. Yep, 1/2, 1/2, 1/2. So it is 1/2 on this road here. That is considered secondary. Primary, the white roads, you can barely see it right up there. Right up here, right there. I don't want to move my camera. Also, there is fog of war, but we don't have any big stacks. Just note that you're free to look at an enemy stack's top combat unit and values to include markers like step losses, but this freedom does not extend to units deeper in the stack. Each formation openly displays its available support units. RD points. Okay, well, 1, yeah. And prepared defense marker. Place these near the owning HQ so as to avoid confusion, or use a card. Okay. make die rolls openly and blah, blah, blah. But we don't need to worry about fog of war because I'm playing myself. Although it would be funny, knowing my memory, that I would probably forget what's under a stack. So I think when I do a bigger fight, I think I'm going to use that rule just because I can't remember anything. All right, so the first activation, you always get to do that. You must activate something. We're going to flip him and activate him. There's always the preparation part of the activation sequence. The MSR block number, we're not even worriing about MSRs. We're fine. We're going to say just, if you check here, I'm going to say everything is fine. Here's a little access supply point. I'm not even going to worry about that part. Okay. Skip to step C if not doing a recovery activation, right? Snafu. The active player makes a modified die roll on the snafu table. We're going to say that passes. Objective markers. Okay, this is where you need to think about what you're going to do and where to place your objective markers. Now, I plan on doing, before I get into the objectives though, about that main supply rule thing, you want a continuous series of legal hexes that connect all three of the following in order from the HQ through its combat trains to a supply source. All right, so just in case you're wondering, HQ through its supply train to a supply source. Bing, bing, boom. All right, then, so let's not worry about that and mention it ever during the rest of this. All right, now. Okay, engagements, if I remember correctly, do not require an objective marker, but I am going to double tap and put that right there, and that's going to kind of tell me what I'm leaning toward doing. You can see other people in other videos doing this. Then there's the 2 hex radius. So I'm just going to put that right there. But I'm doing that mainly for the DRM. Engagements don't need an objective marker. And it allows you to make a regular attack, a shock attack, attack by fire, barrage, move into an uncontrolled victory point hex. In the case of a victory point hex entry, the objective marker must be in the VP hex itself. So say this was I had to take this was an objective, right? You need to have an objective marker on there before you can move into it. You can't put it here and say, oh, it's in the 2 hex radius. It's got to be blink right on there. But this is strictly going to be for combat DRMs. It's just that right off the top of my head, I forgot engagements. Red AV units can do engagements, and assault arrow units like the infantry cannot do engagements. They do shock attacks. So red AVs can do engagements and move right up here and do an engagement roll. I'm just kind of going through this in my head. I'm just trying to set this up. All right. I have a cool chart that I got off of Board Game Geek. It's a little bit complicated to understand, but I'm kind of getting the hang of it. Okay, another thing about engagement or objective markers. They can be placed any distance from your HQ, and they must be in a hex containing an enemy non-support unit or victory hex designation. So here's an enemy non-support unit, or we could say that this point of interest, maybe the Ark of the Covenant is in there. But it could be a victory point hex. So it's got to be on here. And if you think about it, what if this guy was not here? I'd have to go further back. And you're like, oh man, I got to start moving all my units toward that objective. This is going to be brutal. Luckily, I've planned this to be easy, so I'm going to put it right there. Oh, and I'm sorry, there's a little tiny arrow right here. You're supposed to point it at the hex. I just don't want to freak anyone out there. See right there. Okay. Okay, this is considered what they call a real armored vehicle, and he has a zone of control, and it's all adjacent hexes. I believe, if I remember correctly, an AV unit entering an AV enemy zone of control can waive the resulting stop by a stopping engagement unless the unit is light or in screen. At least one stopping engagement is required if the AV enemy zone of control is from a real AV unit, which it is. So he's got 4 movement points, and it'll be like 1/2. He must stop and perform an engagement here because he exerts a zone of control, which is what I wanted to do anyway. So we'll do that, and then let me see what happens next. And remember, too, that there's no range here. Remember, range is usually right down here, right below the action rating. So there's no range here. It's usually right below the action rating. So just a heads up on that. So you don't have to worry about that in this example. There are some armored units though that have, like, for example, a 2 range or an 88 or a 102 that has like a range of 2, and they form engagement zones. Okay, and those extend out to a unit's range or visibility, whichever is less. So engagement zones extend into but not through blocking terrain also, and they don't affect leg movement or attack movement, but HQs can't enter them in normal movement nor into retreat within one, and trucks must stop when they enter an engagement zone. So if you had like a 2 here, this would expand out 2 hexes, and if the truck was booking down the road, he'd have to stop. So that's the difference between an engagement zone and a real AV ZOC. So just a heads up on that rule. And you want to check that, ZOC types and effects chart that's in the support book of your 2.0 BCS kit that you got in the box. All right, so units move individually, not as stacks. One unit must end its movement for the phase before another can start. Units stop and or finish during the course of activation. See stop to finish chart for a full listing of causes and effects. And that chart's going to be in your 2.0 book. Things that make you stop. Tactical movement allowance moves into an AV enemy zone of control. Stop. Okay. Then, things that you can do stopped. Initiate engagements. Attack by fire. Assistant attack. Spot barrages. Etc. Etc. Now I'll direct you to 4.4 in the series rules 2.0 about stopping engagements, required or not required. There's a 4.4a in there. A moving unit is required to make at least one stopping engagement if the AV zone of control is generated by either a real AV unit, like it is here, or a host with standoff support. Host has limited support. Well, remember, they can't use it, but it's only limited. It's not standoff. So there's a lot to consider in this game when you make every move. It's like a giant puzzle. So you'll definitely want to download the chart off of Board Game Geek. So just a heads up. So now I'm going to try to win this stopping engagement so I can keep going. And it's like, the Panzers are breaking through back into our supplies and communications hub, and all hell's breaking loose. So let's just see what happens. I just want to do a simple one. I'm not going to continue to keep playing it through, but let's see what happens, right? So an engagement, you might say, hey, what's the difference between engagement and like an attack? Engagements represent armored armed units exchanging fires. Only the active player initiates engagements. Resolve them on the engagement table. Remember, I showed you in my first video, this has really weird combat tables. They're super tiny. So you'll want to look here. Remember, there's the combat table. There's a barrage table, combat table, and then there's this little weird engagement table right here. We're going to be on this one right here. Now, if I wanted to say there was a stack here without, okay, just bear with me here. Say this wasn't here, and it was, let me find one here. It was right here, yeah, right there. Say it was this infantry. You would use attack by fire because it doesn't have an AV value. So let me just get rid of that. We're gonna go back here and put the Matildas back here. Okay, so engagement fire is what makes an engagement fire. A qualified active AV unit which is not in support. Okay, that's what we're using right there. It's firing on a single enemy AV unit target in its range. Well, remember, if there's not a range on the counter, it's known as 1. So that's what he's doing. The limitations on the range, there's visibility, blocking terrain, etc., etc. And you should note that, I should point this out, that with an engagement, there's no advance after combat after any engagement, no matter what the result. So there's no need for me to be able to move into that to enter the target's hex. So just take note of that also. Now, like I stated earlier, engagements don't require the target to be in an objective zone, but I double tap, which reminds me, there was this guy that was mad on Board Game Geek. His review was like, oh, the game uses slang terms and tries to be cool, like double tap. And I'm like, really? I mean, seriously, that's what you're going to complain about? So I'm going to say double tap as many times as I can in this video. So I double tapped here, and that double tap is going to give me a modifier on the die roll. That's why double taps are useful. All right, the inactive player selects the unit in the target hex to be the target of the fire's engagement. Choose the target unit with the greatest AV or range in the following priority. Priority, real AV unit. Well, that's the priority, so that's what he's going to pick. That's the target. Okay. A given target unit can be engaged any number of times in a phase. Ouch. If the target's hex contains terrain or the target itself is prepared, the maximum engagement range is reduced to 1. So if you had an 88 out here, like a range of 2 or whatever, if he was in terrain. Now, I'm not really sure. Does a point of interest count as terrain? No, they do not. It's right there on the chart. Features without combat or movement effects. Yellow dot, point of interest. You see that? It's always there if you just look. All right, here you go. It's the moment you've all been waiting for. We're going to resolve. Resolve engagements by rolling 2 dice on the engagement table, adding any applicable modifiers. Engagement table. The base for each side is its AV plus its action rating. Use the host unit for action rating of support. Okay, I don't know what that means. Oh, okay. I know what that means. All right, fire only. Double objective zone +1. Limited AV. Nope. All right. The base for each side is its AV plus its action rating. All right, give me a second here. All right, let's add these up here. AV 2. Action rating 5. That's really good, isn't it? Those Germans. So that's 7. We have the double tap, puts us at 8, because that's +1. Now we need to see the target. Multiple supports. No, because he doesn't get support. Non-support standoff unit, like an 88 or something. Like if there's like an 88 sitting here, say the rolls were reversed, you might get a +1 for that. Well, he's got a 6, so 3 + 3 is 6. I think we're looking at a +2, and we're going to roll the dice. I believe I got that right. The net modifier equals fire's total minus target total. And you roll 2 dice, and I think I had 2. Target is not support. Target is real AV. Well, let's see what happens, okay? Let me know if I did that wrong. All right, let's see what we get. Let me get 2 dice here. Okay. Did I roll on camera? I don't think you guys ever believe me. I don't have my dice tower. Okay, you guys ready? We got +2 on this. 7, that's a 9. Ha ha ha. Yeah. Target, loss, and retreat. 9 or more. Okay, interesting. All right, now in the rule book, I thought it was kind of cool. I should have done that too. On page 29 of Series 2, they show an engagement with a ranged armor unit, which I think is kind of neat. Okay. All right, so we got to apply the result now. And let's see, target, loss, and retreat. So let's see what that does. They got optional rules sprinkled all throughout this rule book. I mean, it's cool, I guess, but... Oh, target loss. Okay, that's right. So remember, if I wanted to continue moving, remember I made an engagement thing. I could break the engagement and keep moving if I wanted to. So I would have to win the engagement. So I won the engagement. He lost the engagement. He's also forced to retreat. Yes, not only does he have to retreat. Now, here's the funny thing that threw me off when I first saw this. I want you to look closely. If you have BCS, the 2.0 charts and tables, take a look at the engagement table and take a look at the combat table. Okay. I need someone to tell me where in the 2.0 rulebook it says how many steps you lost or you lose on the engagement table when it just says both loss and target, loss, and retreat as the result. I could not find, this threw me for a loop. I could not find anywhere in the rules except a picture example where he just said the unit takes a step loss. Is there a rule somewhere that tells me what the step loss amount is for that engagement? Because I could not figure it out for the life of me. I asked around, it's 1 step. So you do take a step loss on the engagement plus the retreat. The combat table shows you the exact number of steps you lose, but I hope that it's just not in a picture example. That's got to be written somewhere, and unless I'm missing, I cannot find it. I have looked everywhere. Steps, check the index. Maybe I'm missing a little tiny sentence somewhere. Anyway, if you could just let me know in the comments, that'd be great. So, target loss and retreat, he's got to go back 3, and he's going to take a step loss. And I probably won't do the fatigue after all. The fatigue's at 0. Anyway, fatigue goes from fresh to 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is the worst. After this, you would normally, after you do an activation or whatever, you would normally roll for a fatigue check on the unit that was doing the activation, but I'm not going to show that in this video. I'll do it separately probably. Just keep in mind that he's still active, and he has another fire event, and you know he's still got movement points left over, so he's not done. So just a heads up. All right, so this unit here is going to take a step loss. Remember, in this game, steps are not like people killed or things like that. It's more of a breakdown of the overall efficiency of the unit. So he's going to go to 3 steps, and we're going to put that underneath there like so. He has 4. There's your 4 right there, and then we're just going to retreat him 3. 1, 2, 3, like so, and that'll be the effect of that engagement. Let me know if you can find that rule about the step loss on that engagement thing. I could not find it anywhere. It just says target loss. And then I was like, loss of steps? How many? Okay. Yeah, so a little bit strange. And I had to watch other people's videos, and they were all doing 1 also. So if this were a victory hex, it would be, you know, empty. And that's that. Okay. Okay, that is a very simple engagement example. And it took me 30 minutes, I guess because I was blabbing a lot. Okay, so if I did anything wrong there, let me know, but that is as simple as it gets. I'm still trying to get these rules down, and while I do it, I just wanted to make these videos. The map will be changing probably to Panzer's Last Stand because it's East Front, and that's my thing, so we'll see how that goes. Continue to watch, subscribe, like, check out all the other awesome YouTube wargamers out there that are playing BCS. I think Tabletop's Edge just posted a new video, depending on when I put this up. Is it a day ago or 2 days ago? Anyway, he's got like an hour-and-a-half long one, and I would do that, and Wise Guy, either one. They really go in depth and get super into it. Okay, that's it. Let me know if I screwed anything up. That's as basic as it gets. Thanks.